Hello and welcome everybody. Nice to see you. I'm George, here at Kilohearts for another exciting live stream, but this time with a twist, or a guest. A twist which is a guest. We're here with Cameron, aka Venus Theory, and I'm going to show you to him now. There he is. Hi Cameron, how are you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing really, really well. I hope that everything is set up technically correctly so that we can see and hear one another and you can see us at home. Please let us know in the comments if you are not seeing somebody or not hearing somebody, or if the levels are wildly off. I'm presenting and producing in the building this evening. I'm the only Kilohearts left here this evening, so I hope we've got it all set up, but let us know if not. And please get your questions in for Cameron. We're going to be taking some questions later in the stream. So any exciting ideas or thoughts you have, I'm sure he'll be very happy to hear them. But I would like to begin with the really important questions, Cameron. I'd like you to start by telling us about your hair care routine. How does a man get such a lush and rich beard and mustache going? Please take the floor and tell us.
Let's see, my hair care routine. I got soap. For a very long time, I was a fan of like the 15-in-1. You know, it's like the oven degreaser / shampoo and conditioner / car tire conditioner, whatever. And then my wife informed me that there are, in fact, multiple kinds of soap for different applications for bathing and such. So now I have hair. I have 2-in-1. She let me have that for my hair, and body wash, which apparently is separate. I just use body wash for everything, you know, my whole life because it's soap. I do have beard wash now. That's pretty good. Duke Cannon beard wash. It smells like Hefeweizen, so that's nice. And a little bit of beard oil now and again. Keeps it from getting too, I don't know, scraggly and annoying. But now I'm kind of in between things right now. I was going to shave before this stream and clean up, but I'm at that phase of my, you know, project work where I'm just kind of over it and I don't care right now.
It's good to know there are intricacies, though. It sounds like a serious project with serious implications. You're doing a good job.
It is way more work unless you want to look super homeless. You know,
of course,
that's the thing is you can let it grow and go wild, but if you take care of it, it really does help. I think the real trick, I told my brother-in-law this, is one time, just once, you have to let it grow all out and get real nasty and gnarly. Then you trim it back. And then as long as you maintain that, you're good.
Excellent. And do you take the same approach to your sound design? Are you a detail-oriented person when it comes to phase plant and synthesis in general, sound design effects? Or are you a let it grow out and see what comes kind of a guy?
A little bit of both. I guess it depends on the application. I mean, the further along I've gotten in like my career doing sound design and like composition and stuff, especially, I like the idea of questions and seeing where things can go. And I like the idea of trying to challenge habit and preconceptions into something. Of course, there's a lot of technicality that can go into this stuff. And in some cases, that's warranted. You know, if I'm composing for like a short film or a game or something, there's like the LFE channel where, you know, phase and all that stuff is very, very important. But at the same time, it's interesting to ask yourself, well, like, what if I avoid that? You know, what if I intentionally don't care? What happens then? You know, how far can I push this idea? So I think there's a time and place for details, but the more I play with things, the more I don't like thinking about them, just because I think the details are often there as a polishing step. So it's once I've got the idea, then I use, you know, the detail work to refine what I do and don't like about something. But at the same time, there's a lot of power in embracing the flaws of something as a leading element rather than something we're trying to cover up. I was watching something the other day of I think it was a BBC documentary. I don't really remember, but they were talking to a composer and he was mentioning that at the time, this was back in like the 70s or something, he was using tape recorders and monophonic synthesizers. And it was the idea that as he started multi-tracking, the noise floor increased, you know, because equipment wasn't so good back in the day. But he was like, that became equally as interesting as what was being played. So I like that idea. And I think it's a Brian Eno quote of, as soon as something can be avoided, it's going to be emulated. I think that's a good idea.
That's a sort of state of nirvana or balance there where you can look at the flaws as a part of your process, I guess. and not obsess too much about the things that ultimately either contribute or take away, depending on your point of view. These are all parts of the process, tools in your toolkit, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And
I think there's a fetishism for details anymore as well. And I think a lot of that stems from like the YouTube production community and, various subreddits and forums and whatever, where people just try to out technical each other, but no one's talking about like, is it a good idea fundamentally? Is it interesting? Does it sound good? Does it challenge something? And I think that's where a lot of the fun lies, because you could sit there and do all sorts of cool technical wizardry. We all do now and again, at least to the best of our ability. But, it's the old saying, if you can't master your way out of a bad mix, you can't mix your way out of a bad arrangement, can't arrange your way out of a bad song. And I think that's very much, there is no sound design in the world that's going to cover up a fundamentally crappy idea.
That's so true. Where do you look at yourself then? Are you fundamentally a composer then who uses sound design and mixing and mastering as the necessary tools of the trade, or are you one of those other things primarily?
I mean, I think we all are at the end of the day. What's the quote? It's from some really famous book that escapes me right now, but art is the communication of feelings. I think that's the quote. And I think we all are sound designers who become composers to some degree. Whether you're using presets or not, what we're doing is painting time with different shades and ideas and things. So I think it's more, in my mind, about being an artist than it is any one thing. I don't mind creating different things. That's why I have like a YouTube channel. That's why I like having Blender on my computer. I think it's just about pursuing the idea of creating something that does whatever it is I'm trying to express. So sometimes I think I lean more into the sound designery world. Sometimes I'm more composer. Sometimes I'm more chin stroking, what is the meaning of all of this? And other times I'm just drinking whiskey on the porch with my dogs.
Yeah, well, it definitely shows in your content on YouTube that you're a person with many interests and many disciplines and stuff.
Which is a terrible thing for a YouTube channel, by the way.
Well, maybe, but not just in the breadth of content that you cover, but in the fact that you clearly care about the presentation of your content, for example. You're not just talking about sounds and who cares how it looks. You clearly take a lot of joy and interest in the way that you film your shots, the way that you edit your sequences. Is that something that is a passion related to your sound design? Is it something you take alongside it? Is it a necessary burden?
I mean, I've always been a very visual person. And, years and years ago, I was really into photography and film photography and stuff. In another life, I started doing band photography, live event photography and stuff like that. Eventually got a little bit more into videos. Believe it or not, this is not my first YouTube channel. The other ones no longer exist, though. But yeah, when I was younger, I guess this was around the time I was maybe like an early teen. This is when stuff like the Motorola Razr came out, if anyone remembers that. The really cool phone everyone wanted. And you could record video clips on it. And I was... my dad had the Razr, so I'd have to borrow my dad's phone and I would make little movies on it. So I've always been very into that. But cinematography, photography, stuff like that is definitely something I'm interested in. As a very visual person, I like watching movies and things like that because that's really inspiring to me. So I try and communicate those same ideas through that, because especially as I've started really pursuing this vein of content on YouTube, it's an extension of the expression of what am I trying to convey here, and why are you going to feel this way when this happens, and why can't the same level of detail I put into music and sound design apply to a YouTube video? And it's not a particularly unique idea. I mean, there's incredible short films and stuff people produce on YouTube that you can watch for free, but in my head, I guess it became a question of like, well, why can't music YouTube look like that? Because I think Ricky Tinez especially inspired me a lot to just dig into that idea a little further. And sure, it comes across as super pretentious, but I think artists should always be pretentious. That's the best way to.
I couldn't agree more.
That's the best way to dial your idea.
No, because
if people don't like it, then who cares? They're going to
exactly.
Leave
Ultimately, you're not being an artist because you want to be liked by everyone. At least I hope not. You're being an artist because you want to do things that other people are too embarrassed to do and see who likes them up. Yeah, that's my feeling at least. Wonderful. Yeah, well, for sure. So there are a few great comments coming in. I'll just point out a couple and ask the folks at home to keep them coming, because we'll come back to these a bit more later on. Do you drink coconut? Asks Toy Soldier.
Do I drink coconut? Coconut water?
It's a great question. No, it just says coconut.
Do I drink coconut? I've never tried. They're pretty hard. I don't know. I got a blender that can do one, but I'll drink coconut water. I actually bought a coconut week or two ago at the grocery store here because my wife and I went to Mexico, and at the little resort we were at, they had coconuts where they had little eyeballs and like smiles on them made out of fruit. And my wife went through probably 40 of those. So she saw a coconut at the grocery store. I was like, we got to have it. So I did do a proper drinking coconut, as I referred to it. So yes, I drink coconut.
Tremendous. You've answered the question beautifully, and better than we ever hoped for. There's a question about your old YouTube channels here. There's always Time Hop Online, says Brian Garlick. So what were those channel names? I want to go hunting. Are you willing to release the secret details?
Honestly, I don't know, because this is like before YouTube had proper handles and stuff, I think. I don't know. How did YouTube work back in like 2011, 2012? Did you have like I think you could name your channel, but I don't know that there was like a URL. I think it was just, YouTube / bunch of numbers. It was probably under old band names, but I don't really remember which ones, honestly.
Brian Garlick, you're going to have to go and find it for yourself with no clues, it sounds like.
It's going to be a hunt, and I know some of them I deleted, and some of them I think YouTube eventually archives like inactive stuff. So, if you could find it, go for it.
Excellent. Yeah. We're going to talk about your new content bank, your new free collection for FaceBlunt users.
Yeah.
Apocryphia. How would you pronounce it?
That sounds close enough for me. I don't know. I went to public school.
Right. Well, we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But before we do, I actually wanted to dive a bit deeper into the YouTube tack, because you've had a very interesting argument, is it fair to say, with YouTube recently about the way that they administrate the content rules and the way that they treat creators who, in their perception, have breached them. I wonder if you have anything more to say about that. I know you've made videos already about it, talked about it a lot, but also what your thoughts are.
3 a.m. drunken rant, yeah.
It's all good stuff, yeah. But beyond that, what your thoughts are in general about the creative economy. Is it a good time for people to be making money as creators? How are they best to do it? What feelings have you got? What ideas and insights can you share with us?
I think it's a good time to make money as a creator online because there's a lot more tools to do it, but it's going to be a lot harder because more platforms are realizing that the monetization options for like a viable business model are terrible. This is something I've seen, and like, I guess a footnote here, much of this is conjecture, but conjecture based on my experience having done this for a long time and having, worked with other companies who run YouTube channels as like a content advisor. One of the interesting examples lately is everybody's, TikTok, right? And I and every other YouTuber have like TikTok FOMO. I hate social media, so I'm like not about it, but I need to post on there. But the interesting thing is TikTok has really struggled with monetization because in the event you're going to watch, let's say one of my videos, and my video is 15 minutes long, right? The pre-roll ad on that, you might get 2 pre-roll ads that are 10 seconds each. There's a couple of mid-rolls, there's a post-roll, whatever. You might use an ad blocker, you might have YouTube Premium, but more or less that's a fair exchange, I guess. If I'm going to watch something that someone spent weeks on, especially like the short films and stuff you can watch on YouTube, it's insane. That's a pretty fair exchange. But if you're on TikTok and you're watching a bunch of 10-second dog farting videos or, whatever your TikTok algorithm suggests to you, are you going to watch a 30-second ad before you go to the next thing? So the TikTok payout is really crappy, and I think YouTube has noticed this as well. There's one creator in particular, So Wiley. I really, really enjoyed her content so far, and I thought it was very interesting that her shorts were doing extraordinarily well, and then just recently they got nuked hard. And it was right around the same time I started noticing the same thing, and then I started going to other YouTube channels, and I noticed the same thing. Shorts were a moment, but YouTube realized, oh, TikTok's business model is super flawed. We copied them, and now our business model is super flawed. It's almost like the two are related. So there is that, and I think the lesson there is obviously don't put all your eggs in one basket. I think, speaking in broad strokes, my YouTube channel, and I'm sure many others in the music creator sphere, just serve as one big billboard advertisement for Creator Incorporated. In my case, it's something that's helped me get into sound design. It's something that's helped open opportunities for me to make the real money, the money that pays my mortgage, the money that allows me to buy groceries and stuff. YouTube is not that. So you have to look at it in sort of a different way.
If I could interrupt just to be impertinent, and obviously you don't need to share anything too personal or that you don't want to share, but what are those revenue streams that you can rely on that are a bit more substantial? What are the kinds of things that people should be using their YouTube channels, their TikToks as a springboard to?
Yeah, I think, and the unfortunate downside of this is that grifting works really, really well. And that's a big problem I think a lot of us have seen. I'm not going to call out any creators in particular here, but I think we all know who they are. It's like on YouTube. If you start a YouTube channel and, God forbid you have an original thought or idea to express, it may or may not work out. If you start a YouTube channel telling people how to grow a YouTube following, or, the TikTok algorithm 5 tips explained, and then you loop them into a free PDF for more tips, and that's actually just a click funnel for an email list, which is then your marketing. That works extremely well. But if you can do that in a way where you have an honest following, that's the way to kind of do it. I think it's a good thing to just advertise the thing you're particularly good at. In my case, I have no delusions of being a touring artist or anything like that. I have no interest in building up a following to go on tour or whatever. I have an interest in sound design and composition and other things like that. So in my case, my YouTube is just an extension of here are things I do and am interested in and like to talk about. It just so happens I also have sample packs and, I can compose stuff for your videos and whatever. So the revenue is kind of whatever you want it to be. It just has to be something that you can legitimize and back up. If you're going to buy $1,000 course from a YouTuber on how to grow a YouTube following, but they're only pulling 2,000 views a video, it's probably not great. Super Eye Patch Wolf had a great video about it on the idea that most success is not something that you can replicate. I just gave a guest lecture at West Michigan University a couple weeks ago about similar things, and when I was asked to do the guest lecture, and whenever I'm asked to do these guest lectures, that's always the thing they want to know is how did you get to where you got? How did you do what you do? And how can people who aspire to do this as a career perhaps follow a similar path? And I think that's a huge waste of time because, as Super Eye Patch Wolf noted, it's this is a set of circumstances that applied to me once, in my case, starting a decade ago, that somehow ended up here. And if I had to zero out from today and do it again, I don't think, one, I could do it again, and two, I don't think I could replicate those steps. Yeah, well, some of it's just luck and happenstance, and some of it's just the internet was a different place 5 years ago.
Absolutely. And it was certainly the case with musicians 15 years ago that they were being told live shows will never make you any money, but it's a great calling card for your albums, right? And then in the 15 years after that, that message completely flipped. There's no money in recorded music. Your live shows are where the money is, and you have to just record the music, assume you'll never make a penny, and use that as advertising for your live tour. And that will change again. Something else will be the paradigm in the future. And it's the same with content creation.
YouTube is my form of touring, I guess, in a way. YouTube is my outlet, and I think that's the creator economy we're in, where if you're a musician and if you're a musician, you post a TikTok of you playing your guitar or doing something cool, that is all it takes. I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but I know my channel every month, I reach about 800,000 unique people. That is mind blowing. And I could never do that touring.
No.
You know what I mean? So it's there's different ways to do it, and what you're going to do with that is what matters. You could take the grease bag route and make a ton of money pretty easy by just, grifting and not having a soul. Or, you can kind of follow that same Kevin Kelly model of like as a touring artist, you build up where you're selling out 100-200 capacity venues pretty regularly. That's all it takes to be a touring artist. If you're going to start a TikTok and you post 2 or 3 little covers a week and that's enough of a funnel to drive people to your Bandcamp or something, that's it.
And done. The key is, if I am understanding correctly, you just got to do what you love. You've got to focus on what you're good at and make sure that you're doing that to the highest possible standard, right?
Exactly.
And everything else is just means to an end.
And you got to understand that like you just have to do your thing, because the currency anymore is mostly attention. Right? And that's like the Mr. Beast thing of, if you want to be the next Mr. Beast, the first thing you do is don't make a Mr. Beast video.
Absolutely.
And that's something I think we all struggle with. We all have our aspirations and our influences and stuff. And that's certainly been a big part of like even the shift in my own content on YouTube and stuff is, oh, I really like this creator and this creator and this creator. So I'm going to take this thing I like and this thing I like and kind of mix it together. And that makes me. But I'm going to put my own little ideas into it. Otherwise, if I was just replicating, another big channel like In the Mix or something, I'm just going to be a really bad version of that.
Sure. If you had to, I'm sure this is almost certainly an impossible question to answer, but if you needed to describe your style, your artistic voice, your unique vision, what would you say that is? What's the Venus Theory story?
Pretentious mustache coffee time with high depth of field. I don't know, fast lenses and pretty colors. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, musically, I always kind of fall under, I guess, what I call cinematic electronic, because I don't really know what it is I do a lot of the time, because there's a little variance of it. Like some of it's more ambient, some of it's more something else. But I think that the consistent string is like a sound design focused version of, I guess, more minimal electronic music that has a sort of cinematic leaning ish. And then video wise, I have no idea. Video essay-ish, chin strokey, pretentious, I don't know, make people on KVR angry at me content, something like that.
Excellent. Yeah. There's no higher goal. That's wonderful.
Right.
Is that a fair sort of
people off? That means you're doing something.
For sure. Is it a fair summary, would you say, of your new content collection? Beard strokey and cinematic and so on.
I guess, yeah. I mean, it's kind of just a hodgepodge of ideas I had that worked together.
Nice. I'm going to try now to show the folks at home what it looks like in a DAW, and apologies if we disappear or stop being heard for a second. I'm going to click this button and you're going to see us, and then I'm going to click this button and you're going to see in the DAW Venus Theory's Apocryphia, the new collection of presets. And I hope I can even press a key on my keyboard and you'll be able to hear some of it at home. This is a preset called Night Ops, for example. I don't know if you can also hear that, Cameron, can you?
I cannot.
You cannot? Okay, so we're not wired up for full feedback, but hopefully the folks at home can hear a little bit of that. And hear how deep and ambient and cinematic and atmospheric it is. There's a lot of sequenced drone-y stuff in there. There's a lot of interesting kind of Foley-esque ambience. Were you thinking particularly about scoring when you made these sounds, Cameron?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just like if I had to make a content bank that I thought was really useful for what I'm doing, what would it be? So it was pushing that, and I really like, especially in Phase Plant, sequencing and stuff is a lot of fun because of all the different modulators and stuff and the macros. And my original intention for this bank was also to add MPE to it, but MPE is just not common enough yet to where I thought that was like super warranted, which I did with Ephemeris. That was a heavily MPE, expressive focused sound bank. But this one was more somewhere between utility sounds and something a little different. Definitely that cinematic electronic edge, but punchier, grittier, organic electronic. I mean, that's a lot of my own sound is combining synthetic stuff with organic stuff, but trying to push it to where nothing is ever that clearly defined.
And it's using the granular engine in Phase Plant a lot. That was one of the kind of themes of this, if I remember correctly.
I think that was the original intention, was like create a phase plant bank based around the granular oscillator that's not just granular pads for the billionth time.
Absolutely. And so it's kind of dark and tasty in its soundscapes. There's a lot of original recordings in there, right?
Yeah, everything is brand new samples sourced from my collection of stuff. There's some of the dulcimer my brother-in-law gave me. I think my viola is in there a couple times with like weird tunings and like weird performances and stuff, just to add these cool organic textures and expressive things. And then my version 1 of my Nightmare box back here also makes up a whole bunch of the samples. So there's 50 some original sources, but George pointed out that there's a problem right now, but we're working on it to where ideally at some point you're going to be able to actually play with the samples on your own. But there's
the idea with Kilohearts content banks is that they're not just preset collections, they also can include content like samples and wavetables and so on. And in this case, I think we've miscommunicated something. We've got something slightly wrong in the way the bank was packaged up, so those samples aren't separately available yet to use as samples, but they will be soon, we hope. We're going to look into it and get it sorted. It's worth noting that this is a free collection for anyone who wants it from Cameron's Gumroad, and I think I put a link in the description of this video, and if not, definitely in the link in the description of the previous video we uploaded on Monday. So you'll be able to find it, and we'll put something in the comments. I'm sure somebody will find the link and put it in the comments for us, but that will be there, and we'll be, if we can figure it out, updating it so that all those samples are available to people to pick apart and use in other patches and so on as well.
Yeah, it's super fun. I mean, there's a lot of tricks I employed in that pack too, of especially using the granular engine to FM wavetables or waveforms or stuff. That's one of my favorite little tricks. I don't know if it was in the phase plant birthday bank, but one of my favorite patches I made was taking just a sine wave really, really low. I don't know if it was even tuned, but a really low pitch sine wave, and then taking Foley and pitching that way down and using that to phase modulate the sine wave, which is, FM for all intents and purposes. But now with the granular engine, you could do that where you can have very sparse grains of, clicky percussive things or whatever, and then FM other oscillators with that, which is such a cool sound. But yeah, I did that with a really low pitch sine wave, really low pitch Foley, ran that through, like 12 dispersers and a big compressor, and man, it's like one of my favorite sound tricks just for like deep, growly, interesting background stuff.
It sounds wonderful. And I wonder if, I know we haven't managed to get it kind of wired in for audio just now, but can we see a bit more of that machine you have behind you?
So this is a fun project since we're coming up on the weekend, and you can all do this because I'm an idiot and I figured this out. So this, I'm trying not to stab my computer screen with it. This is my Nightmare box. It's a wooden box I got at like a fabric store or a craft store or something. And then I went to a hardware store and bought a bunch of springs and dowel rods and little eye bolts and stuff. And then I got a ruler somewhere, and I just screwed the ruler into the top. And then I got some, I think this is paracord. So you can pull this really tight and, kind of use it like a string. You can wrap it around the springs and get different resonances, because the whole box, especially with the springs, is live. I mean, this is, for all intents and purposes, a weird spring reverb. So I did that. All that cost me, maybe $20-$30. Most of it was the box. The rest of it, there's a craft store that's, Joann's or whatever I got this from. And the hardware store is a used hardware store in the city, which I thought was weird. But they sell like old oven racks and all sorts of just odds and ends for, 25 cents. It's the best place in the world for weird projects. Then I went on Amazon and got, hopefully those are in, these piezo elements that were pre-wired So you just stick them on, and then they have the jacks and the volume control right there. So for 30-40 bucks and about 3 beers, you too can make one of these, and you don't have to solder anything if you don't want to. But the volume pots are really handy because this thing can be super, super loud. But yeah, it makes all sorts of weird sounds. You can hit it, you can drop. I got some rock salt, and I dropped rock salt across the top. That was really interesting. I tried crushing it with my hands and with different things. That was really fun. The ruler is one of my favorites because you can just do that and get these insanely deep bass effects. You can yell at it too, and it acts like a microphone. That's one of my favorites. So I've tried setting it in the back of my room, and I'll turn up my speakers really loud and just play stuff into it. I don't know if you're familiar with like the old piano reverb trick, which I think Hans Zimmer used for the Inception Brahms sound, if I'm not mistaken. So it's kind of like that, but it's completely chaotic. And yeah, the dowel rods, you could bow, you could tie things around them. Rubber bands are super fun. This is a spring that I just really stretched out, and you could do that, or you could bow it, pluck it, bop it, twist it, knock it. It's the best. It's so much fun. And I went to the cigar shop down the road, and because I wanted to build another one of these because I'm kind of just in between projects right now and bored. So I was like, all right, I'll do something else. And I went to the cigar shop down the road to ask the guy, like, you got any cigar boxes I could have? And, I was going to give him like $50 for just a couple big cigar boxes to mess with. So, you got any cigar boxes? And he was like, yeah, take as many as you want. If you buy a beer, that's it. So I got a beer and a cigar and then a whole box full of cigar boxes. So I can't wait to play with those. I got more piezo elements because they're super cheap. I bought like 20 of them on Amazon. And a couple new ideas. I got a cigar box guitar kit with a pickup and a neck and whatever. I don't know that I'm going to use the neck, but I think I want to keep the pickup on it because there's metal springs and whatever. So I'm thinking that might be interesting to have like a spring over the guitar pickup and see what that does.
It sounds good to me. Yeah, and the idea here is to not necessarily make a traditionally refined sound, a note even, but just something unique, something you've never heard before. You're generating sound in different ways, right?
And I think that's the beauty of acoustic instruments. And even as we get more into physical modeling and, even within stuff like phase plant or whatever, you could do some really cool physical modeling synthesis that almost replicates the chaos of acoustics. But that, I think, is the final frontier of most things. It's like piano tech from Mozart is, in my mind, one of the golden standards of like how far physical modeling has come. And I love piano tech, but I was at the Sweetwater compound a couple weeks ago and just played an actual upright piano, and it's piano tech is 95% of that. It's just that last 5% is really, really hard to do. And phase plant and stuff can get you close, with like the random modulators and things like that. You can sort of replicate the chaos of acoustics, but where's the fun in that when you could have this?
Yeah, exactly. Right? I think that's kind of the thing. It's like horses for courses is the phrase in English. I don't know if we have that in the US as well, but
not over here in the colonies. That hasn't.
No, right. Yet. But the tool is it's the king's sport. Did you know horse racing?
Yeah.
The idea being that you choose the right tools for the right job, and you can use a synthesizer for all kinds of stuff. But if you want that acoustic chaos, using acoustics is probably a pretty good idea. And there's absolutely no reason why you can't integrate that with a workflow in Phaseplant or in software tools. So,
and it doesn't have to be
thinking
atonal insanity like that. I just find this really useful because it creates cool textures that layer well, or you could do weird things with. Like one of my favorite experiments was recording this at 192, 192K sample rate, and then pitching that down really, really far because then you're not subject to Nyquist as much. So you preserve that high-end content as you shift it down and down and down.
Yeah.
Man, those are
How are the
some of the
piezo's with the
weirdest.
ultrasonic content? Are they picking up a lot of vibrations beyond the spectra?
Surprisingly good. I've
Yeah.
experimented with a lot of different piezo elements over the years doing, like I've built my own spring reverbs and stuff a couple times, and I built other like things. And I've used them on like acoustic guitars and stuff as well, just to, put a piezo element in, drill a hole, wire it up. Now it's an acoustic electric.
Yeah.
I've found, and I don't know why this is exactly, but the bigger the piezo element, the better it tends to work. It doesn't pick up super duper ultrasonic stuff, but the bigger piezo elements, I think these are 55 millimeters, they tend to get a better broad spectrum sound. So as you pitch them down, there is definitely like a pretty hard roll off, but it's better than you might think. So recording at 192, I mean, I found content that still stays up in that like 10 to 15K range, which, for whatever I paid for those, 30 cents each, I'll take it. That's cool.
Yeah,
with me.
absolutely. I wonder if it's time to dive into the comments a little bit. We've got some great questions coming in. Do you feel like it?
Sure, let's go.
Got a word from Amado asking, when it comes to being an artist and creating, what about traditional mediums like pencil and painting? I know you do some more traditional music making as well as the crazy electronic stuff. You are a player of acoustic instruments. Do you also use traditional tools for visual art?
I try. My dad got the art skill in the family. Very, very jealous. But yeah, I can't draw or do anything to save my life. I do like painting. I've tried my hand at it a few times, but it's not something. Yeah, like when you go to the zoo and they have like an elephant paint something and it's just sort of these splatters. That's about my skill level. But I'm very into that, sort of abstract expressionism and whatever. That's why I've found AI art stuff really inspiring. My last release, Canadian Wildfires, the artwork for that was like half generated with Stable Diffusion. And I love that idea. So traditional mediums for me is like photography, I guess. I don't really do anything else because I'm just not that good at it, but I will try it, just for fun, sculpting or whatever. Always liked woodworking stuff. I'm not very good at it, but that's fun too. But yeah, beyond that, I kind of try to stay to my lane when it comes down to like really doing stuff and for real, but open to all forms of trying stuff just because you never know what you might find, or you never know what that might, extract from that process into the thing you actually do. From woodworking, you learn a whole lot of patience.
Oh, sure.
And details.
One more question from Amado. On average, talking about patience, on average, how much time do you invest in building a new preset for Faceplant?
It depends on the preset. It's not a great answer, but it's the way it is. If I'm making a simple respace, 15 seconds. If I'm making a, big sequence, it might be probably good, 10, 20 minutes sometimes. Probably never longer than that, though. I would say on the far end, it's like half an hour to really dial something in. But those are the most tweaky presets. And I find a lot of the time, if it takes that long, it's probably not the best idea. You know what I mean? And like there is a time and place for that, where if it is a very specific, highly engineered thing, then yeah. But I think if you're really that deep in it, most of that time is spent, like let's say you're spending 30 minutes on a preset. The first 5 minutes is where everything important happens, and the next 25 are covering up your mistakes.
Sure. Yeah. Do you find there are a lot of tools that invite more investment of time, or tools that enhance simplicity, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big, and being the pretentious minimalist type, whatever, I'm very into the polybrute and very into stuff like that, PWM Malevolent, where it's just, it does this and that's it. But I'm also equally into the Waldorf Iridium, or the, Euro Bureau I've got on my desk here, or Phase Plant, or Falcon, or whatever. So I think there's ways to go about it, but as you mentioned, it's, choosing the right tool for the job. If I'm doing anything heavily synthesis based, if I'm going hardware, Iridium. If I'm going synthesis, or plug-in, Phase Plant. If I'm doing something very sample oriented, then I'd probably use Falcon, because it has, different sampling abilities or whatever. But if I just need a big, heavy ass analog poly thing, I'm not going to pull up the Iridium for that. I'll just turn on the poly brute, right? It's kind of the old adage of like, I'm not going to paint my wall with a nail gun.
Yeah.
So there's lots of different ways you can go, but
of course, yeah. And do you find that your decisions in what tools to use for what jobs are driven by your intention ahead of time? You know what you want to do, and so you choose the right tool for it, or do you play with things and stuff emerges?
Kind of depends on the application at hand, and I guess in my realm of work, the amount of time I have left to do something, right? Like if I've got to churn a project out in a day, then like let's say it's a scoring thing for like one of the weird facets I found that's really interesting that I do recommend other people look into because it's really fun. Scoring for other YouTubers, really, really cool gig, and I think it's because a lot of YouTubers, myself included, are terrified of using music in their videos. Like I still get claims for using my own music in my videos. It drives me insane, but whatever. So if I get a gig doing that where someone is releasing a vlog or something, right, and they're releasing it on Friday and it's Thursday and I've got to write 20 minutes of music, I'm probably just going to open a bunch of contact patches and not worry about it. But if I'm doing one of my own videos where I'm writing music for it or something that's a little more down the line or whatever, then I'll be a bit more open to allowing, I guess, what I kind of refer to as like the exploratory phase of the idea. Because a lot of the times I think the intention in my mind is discerning what is the least amount I can do to communicate this as clearly as possible. And I think that's a good mindset as an artist because it's easy to get caught up in details. So, if I'm trying to express dark, sullen, forlorn Nordic winter landscapes, I probably just need like a dark analog pad and some strings doing stuff. But what else could I do? What is that texture evoking? Okay, deep frequencies and something that has a very grounded center, and then expressivist textures on top of that. So what else could that be? So if I have the time, then, I might give myself a week or two just to experiment with different ideas. What if I did EMF recordings? What if I sat down and gave myself a week in Phase Plant to build a new content library only for scoring this project? And I think within that exploration phase, it's about inviting the idea of a challenge. Right? Can I score this whole short film with only 6 tracks? Could I do this using only one synthesizer? Could I do this with only one set of presets and so on? But yeah, I think it just kind of comes down to how much time do you have to do the thing.
That's a great answer. And I think that's probably true for everyone. Finding the most efficient way to get to your goal is the ultimate plan, isn't it?
Especially if you want to, get paid and have money to eat.
Exactly, right?
That's good.
Yeah, terrific. A couple more questions then. One from Richard Harmon asking, give us some contrast Venus theory. What's the most enjoyable and the most boring part of making a sample pack?
Most enjoyable, I think, outside of just the feeling of when it's over and it's done, I think the most enjoyable part is the exploration phase of what is this going to be? What am I going to do? What could I try? And I think that's a lot of fun because, again, it's kind of a challenge. In this case, the challenge was make a granular content bank, right? So my first answer to that, and perhaps this stems from the idea of efficiency, is, okay, pads. Cool, easy. I'm going to take pianos and cellos and and it's going to be this big, gorgeous padscape library. But then you question the idea of habit. Every time I open a granular synth, what am I going to do? Pretty pads made of pianos and whatever. Why? It's easy, it's fast, I know how to do it, sure. So what if I didn't do that? What if that was against the rules? And just by, that one little flick of the switch there, you've opened up a much more interesting process and a much more interesting question. So I think that's the best part, is just giving yourself the freedom to come up with a cool idea. Because I think the last thing people need is, Vomit Step Volume 83 billion or, like Granular Pads, volume 8009. I think we all have those. So what am I going to do? What do I like to do with granular? Or what could granular introduce to what I wouldn't normally do with it? So
Right,
that's the
yeah.
cool part. I think the boring part, naming samples sucks. Yeah, that takes forever. Looping samples is always very tedious. You know, the editing process is probably the biggest, I don't know, slog to get
I think
through.
people always think naming samples would be fun. You get to call them crazy
Right.
things like Zappy Wappy number 4, but it isn't fun.
Right.
After number 4, it gets
Well,
boring,
and if
doesn't
you
it?
have 300 presets you have to name, and you have like branding you need to adhere to, or a style you need to adhere to, that's always really annoying. And I think the macroing and things like that can get pretty tedious after a while, especially for larger banks. And then, you know, even preset design can be sort of tedious just because it's like your brain outpaces your ability to quickly click and do things where you're really excited about the idea. So that's the hard part, is just not letting it get boring.
Well, we
Because as soon
appreciate
as you
you
get
putting the
bored,
time in. As soon as you get bored, sorry, go on.
yeah, that's the danger of it, and I think that extends even to like songwriting or just other artistry in general. As soon as you get bored of the idea is over.
Yeah,
So-
no, so right. Well, so then the next question coming in is from Akudings. And the question is, are you planning to upload a video related to game audio?
I have one idea for a video right now. I'm in a bit of a phase with things right now of I'm very against any tutorial or gear or whatever content. I don't know if that'll ever change, but I have an idea for a video specifically about the game Ground Branch that I've been scoring, of just kind of introducing more how I did what I did and why I did what I did, but leaning more into, again, like that expressive and like communicative aspect of the music. You know, why did I make these decisions? Why did I use these types of sounds? And what does that mean? And perhaps diving into non-linear music, because that's something I'm super fascinated with anymore, and something I've tried to explore a lot of times, but I'm really bad at game engines, so I haven't been able to develop some of the ideas I've had with things, because that's a really fun idea, because it challenges, again, one of the like fundamental aspects of the whole process of, I don't remember what that was. It was like a TED talk or something somewhere, you know, to quote a TED talk as a millennial here. Something about the idea of, there was a guy who doesn't take his car to the market. He walks instead because it's slower. So we're questioning the idea of efficiency and why do we care so much about that? And I think that's a fun thing with music, is we're so used to music being, you know, on Spotify streaming, whatever, right? It's a song and it plays back the same every single time and it goes from start to end. And I think we lean into the other end of that, especially with like the modular music scene and generative music and stuff. But it's so interesting to think about the idea of semi-generative music where you have no control over the system. You know, you as you would in like generative modular stuff, you dictate the rules in that, you know, maybe we're giving a set of stems that get mixed in the game engine, but we're not saying if or when any of these events occur. And that's really fascinating to me, because it, you know, it removes, and especially doing composing work. I love composing, you know, for videos and ads and whatever, but it's the same thing. You know, it's music and it starts and ends and it does the same thing every time. But what if it didn't? And what if you do all these things and some of them don't even happen? How do you still make that idea viable? And that's just, I don't know, super interesting to me. But that's one of those, that's a video that I would put on my idea board that Cameron is interested in. And there's like 20 other people that are interested in that. So once I can package the idea, then yeah, I'll be doing something about game audio. I just got to figure out how to make it, make it into a YouTube video.
Sure. Is it a difficult duality between Cameron and Venus Theory? Do you think a lot about the difference between yourself and your brand or your content or your delivery to an audience?
Yeah, and I guess it kind of comes in different versions of that, where there's, you know, Cameron, and then there's Venus Theory, the YouTube channel, and then there's Venus Theory, the artist. And there is a lot of overlap in them. But, you know, in making a career out of this sort of stuff, you learn to understand where those overlaps matter in terms of making things happen. But you also understand the importance of allowing these things to exist separately. And I think that's really hard on social media and YouTube and stuff, not to fall subject to just pure egoism constantly. You know, none of us tweet or post an Instagram picture or whatever without the intention of other people seeing it. And I think, you know, you have like a diary, or maybe you do journaling or whatever, and that's the opposite of that, where we share thoughts and ideas or things or little scrapbook memories. But online content is pure ego, and it's really hard to get out of that. But also, if you're doing YouTube or social media or whatever, you play the game. That's just, you know, that's how it works, right?
Yeah.
And I think the same thing happens as a musical artist. To some degree, you do play the game at all times. Some artists don't, but, you know, they're very few and far between. And obviously, they're not artists that people really know about. There was some like minimalist composer, I can't remember who, I should know the name, but they never have recorded anything or released anything. And they perform like one piece of music over and over or something weird like that. And that's a really interesting idea. And, you know, there's artists like Burial, right, who have followed sort of a non-traditional path. But again, you do play the game. You make albums, you release them, you put them on streaming and da-da-da-da-da. But yeah, it's a delicate balance, I guess I would say that.
Is it something you enjoy? Do you like finding that balance?
Yeah, and I think that's the particular breed it takes to make this sort of thing happen, because it's not a fun process. And especially, you know, with things like social media and whatnot, the analytics and stuff really weigh on you because numbers don't lie. So that's sometimes a pretty hard pill to swallow, or something that gets really annoying and tedious to have to think about. But I enjoy that because I don't know, in my head, a lot of this stuff, sound design, music composition, YouTube, whatever, it becomes gamified to an extent. And I think that's just maybe sort of out of necessity, again, to not get bored.
Absolutely.
So, you know, drilling down, like, if I'm going to make a YouTube video, is it a good idea? Does it make, I guess, what I would consider a YouTube video? Is it going to like challenge me in some way, or what am I going to bring to this? And does it make a Venus Theory video? And those are interesting questions to ask, because I think it forces you to get better at the thing you're doing, you know, to understand that not every idea makes a good video. Not every video makes a good YouTube video. Not every YouTube video makes a video for your channel. So
no, understood,
I think
absolutely.
The better you get at answering those questions as an artist, you know, like if you're going to make an EP or something, right? You're going to make music. All right. What type of music are you going to make? Okay. But, you know, what makes that music your music? And especially, you know, if you want to gamify the whole thing and maybe make money at it and whatever, if you're going to release this EP of like 5 songs or whatever, and every song is 3, 4, 5 minutes, or maybe you go the opposite route. Maybe it's like some big 30-minute weird experimental thing. Why am I going to give that time to you? And if you answer that question, that's where interesting things start to happen, because it forces you to get out of the box and start, you know, not trying to put names to things, and start challenging your ideas and start unwinding habits. And that's really powerful, because then you are left to fill in the blanks. And I think that's what makes really great ideas.
It's a great way of looking at things. I'll just say to the folks watching at home, it's probably your last chance now to get some questions down in the section below. So leave a few comments for Cameron and a few ideas and questions. We'll try to get to them before we finish in 5 or 10 minutes. You've all been leaving some really great stuff. There's one more coming in from I Am Hero TV. And before I read it out, I'll just ask everyone to click the like button and subscribe to the Kilohearts YouTube channel and all that. It's really nice to see so many of you here. Question from I Am Hero TV for you, Cameron. When you are making a WAV sample pack, how do you decide how loud, e.g. decibels or LUFS, to make the samples in the pack?
That's kind of dictated by the client a lot of the time. I think the general standard for WAV file delivery is, at least in my experience, you're going to do 24-bit samples at 48K. That's just the format. And the volume, generally speaking, is -1 dB true peak. That's the standard I run into most of the time. If you're doing something like multi-samples, though, you can't really do that, because if every sample on a multi-sample library, contact library or something, if every sample in there is -1 dB true peak, that's really, really loud. And if I'm going to play a chord of, 4 or 5 things happening that are at -1, that's really, really, really loud, discounting the idea of velocity tied to the amplitude. So in those cases, you might deliver at like -15 LUFS, because then for polyphony, that levels out pretty nicely, and it makes, designing presets and such easier. But there are always exceptions to these things, especially with things like Foley, or I don't know, more like case use sounds. So in some cases, if I'm doing Foley recordings, if I went out to the park and I recorded things with my handheld recorder, and I'm just giving you like nature ambiences or something, if I normalize that to -1 dB true peak, that's going to be awful. Like, the noise floor is going to be insane, and it's going to be so loud and just like not work in the context of how the user is going to implement this thing. So if we're talking, big dubstep drums or whatever, yeah, those should be loud, -1 dB, whatever, probably even clipped a little bit just to make them super heavy. But if you're recording a pack of vinyl crackle, I probably wouldn't normalize that very loud. So I think it's a combination of use common sense and your ears. If I'm if I'm buying your sample pack, and let's say it includes multiple things, if I'm dragging these things into my session as an end user, what are they going to do, and what should they do out of the box? So if I'm presenting problems to the user by normalizing everything to this arbitrary value, my hiss samples from tape cassettes and whatever are going to be way too loud against the kick drum and the snare drum. So yeah, the general standard is -1 dB true peak for pretty much every delivery, about -15 LUFS or so for multi-samples, and then other stuff, just, use your ears.
Common sense, huh? That's a great idea. Yeah. It's excellent. Okay, another couple of questions then. So this one from Sister Venus. How much do you love your sister? I don't know what that means.
Oh, that's Sister Venus. How you doing, Sister Venus? I gave her the link to this yesterday. I didn't know if she'd show up or not. How much do I love her?
Looks like she did.
Like 3, I guess.
It's a great answer. I'm not going to ask out of what. So a question from... This looks like the word entropy, but it's actually spelled E7R0PY. So let's
I appreciate that.
Go for entropy. Do they even ask for FLAC? Seeing Kilohearts doing FLAC on wavetables, does FLAC have potential, the FLAC file format?
Yes and no. Most of what I get asked to deliver is wave, unless otherwise specified. A lot of things don't support FLAC, which is kind of weird. I'm not totally sure why that is, but I think it's kind of like why SFZ is still a popular format. I mean, SFZ has been outdated for like ever, but because it was so popular, it's now kind of a universal assumption that like if you have this as an SFZ, we can easily convert it to, .kilohertz or whatever, because we know that standard. So I think wave remains the standard. I don't totally understand why. And I guess, lossless and whatever. But there have been cases where I've delivered sample libraries, like big multi-sample things, as 16-bit 441K files, which is like a big no-no. You should have full lossless whatever. And I've done stuff like that where I've even delivered in like Ogg Vorbis format, where it's a lossy codec. But that's what gets implemented, and it sounds fine. So... yeah, everything I know and do typically is wave. I'll use FLAC if and when it's available, because that's a huge space saver, but it's not all that common, and I don't know why that is. A quick follow-up question just directly from me then. No one else is asking this, so forgive me. But the personal question I want to ask you on that topic is, how much does fidelity matter in real life? Obviously, from project to project, use case to use case, it's different. But do you worry a lot about fidelity and lossless files and audio quality, or indeed in video? Do
care about every pixel in that degree.
Yes and no. I mean, I think it's a good idea to offer things in their best form, but I guess at the end of the day, it's just, does the end user care? You know, a great example of this being right now, I have a, I don't know, $2,000 camera with a $800 lens on it to stream this in like 1080p.
Well, and it's even worse than that because you're in a sort of a cropped window so within like, Google Meet video. So apologies to everyone at home that Cameron's not in quite the perfect sharpness. I'm probably using
$3,000 some dollars worth of gear here. Well, and lighting. So lighting, computer, everything. I'm using thousands and thousands of dollars of gear here to stream to you in 480p or whatever.
You see, one of the funny reasons I asked that question, though, is that I think all of that stuff still pays dividends because you look a lot better in this screwed up format than you would do if you started from a bad point. And that's what you said earlier on, you know, no master can fix a bad mix, no mix can fix a bad.
Exactly. So I think there's a point where fidelity matters as long as the idea is represented. If there's an obvious problem with it, then it's an issue, but most people don't care. And I think that's kind of the big thing we forget a lot of the times. And I can already see the Reddit threads about this because, you know, Reddit hates me, but you know, if you deliver something in a lossy MP3 and the client loves it, who cares? I think a lot of the times we just try to out-engineer other engineers for the sake of saying that we did. You know, if you deliver a big multi-sample library and all the samples are MP3 files and the user makes a song with it, is that an issue?
It sounds great. It sounds great. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because it's like, you know, if I was purely worried about fidelity all the time, how many ideas would I have never pursued?
Yeah.
Right. You know, if I was worried about the pure idea of doing this the right way as purely as possible, I probably never would have got into sound design because I would have said, well, you can't record a toilet and turn that into a kick drum. You know, why not?
Sure, you can't.
Yeah, you can't. You know, you can't tune the cello down until the strings barely vibrate. You know, says who? Like, you can't deliver this and, you know, and like, there's always going to be the audio files and whatever. But again, I think that's the difference between being an engineer and an artist. So again, I think it's just like fidelity and stuff important only to the extent that the idea is communicated correctly. But,
absolutely,
you know, if I showed my wife a 64K MP3 file as versus like a 24-bit wave master, I don't think she's going to care. So again, who are you delivering to? And does it matter to them? I think that's kind of the way I would look at it.
Wonderful. I think that's a great little piece of a little nugget of philosophy for people to take away with them. Thank you so much, everyone at home, for your questions, your comments. I hope we got to some of them. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them. And thanks so much, Cameron, for being here with us and chatting for this hour. And it's great to play with your new bank, and I hope everyone at home is going to enjoy it too. We'll get those samples in there, as we discussed.
Yeah, whenever that happens, I will issue an update on Gumroad. It'll be free, so you can actually play with the samples. That was my intention, but I didn't bother double checking it after the release, I guess, to make sure that was the case. I just assumed it was. And there's a mistake. So now I know not to do that next time.
Hey, and this is a good moment then to mention that the whole thing is free and it's there for anyone who wants to go and grab it and use it in Faceplant, get a feel for Cameron's sound and style. There's some interesting things in there to experiment with. Anything else to mention at this point, Cameron? Where can folks find you? Where can they hear more? What are you up to next?
I've been told I have a YouTube channel. Venus Theory is me. Got my Gumroad page. I got the new free Faceplant bank. There's some new free libraries. New drum pack I did with the Landscape Noon, which does pair really well with this, by the way. Shameless self-promo. I think I might start working on another album again. So if you want to hear my music, you could find me on Bandcamp. And I think most of it's on Spotify. I kind of quit uploading to Spotify and stuff because I don't know that I care anymore. And Ground Branch, I'm producing the score for, and the score for Ground Branch is coming soon-ish? Question mark. I know.
Excellent. Is that going to be a separate release?
That'll be released through my Bandcamp when the official full soundtrack is done. But the game is still in alpha, I guess technically. So That's a ways off, but in one of the upcoming updates for Ground Branch, you can hear my score in the game, and some of it is using this very box that I used in this phase plant bank. And I think maybe a couple of the presets from this phase plant bank are in there somewhere. I think I used at least one. And if you can tell me which one, good job.
Yeah, well, come back and talk to us again when that all comes out. We'll look forward to speaking to you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Hey, no, thank you. See you again soon. And I'll just go to my oneer and say thanks very much, everyone, for being here. And don't forget to like the video, click thumbs up so lots more people can see it, and subscribe to the Kilohearts YouTube channel. Join the Discord, all that good stuff. And we'll be seeing you again soon. For now, goodbye and thanks very much.